Hey everybody, Sarah Rosensweet here, Peaceful Parenting Coach, and welcome to today's live Q&A. Every Monday I'm here at noon or close to it. Sorry I'm a little late today. I had some technical challenges. Every Monday at noon, and a lot of the time I choose a topic. We've talked about how to get your kids to listen. We've talked about consequences. We've talked about I forget what the other thing was we talked about this month, but I'm going to do a once a month live Q&A just to answer all your little challenges and questions that you have. So we're going to jump right in. I've got a bunch of questions that people left from me in various places, and I have a whole bunch of mamas. Jennifer, Jana, Talia, Jen, and Josie all want to know about their strong-willed kids. So let's talk about strong-willed kids. Strong-willed kids have a very strong sense of themselves and their personal integrity, and they will not do what they're being asked to do unless there's a very good reason. So they have to feel like you have their best interests at heart. They have to feel connected to you. That's one really big thing. The more connected you are to your strong-willed kid, the more they will be cooperative. So if they will want to do what you want them to do more than what they want, if they feel that being close to you is what they get out of it. And we are actually wired that way so that we don't follow people who we don't feel connected to, and it's sort of an evolutionary survival thing. We really are only programmed to follow people that we are feeling connected to. So make sure that with your strong-willed kid you've got a great connection. Do special time, which is one of our great peaceful parenting tools. Take time to connect and cuddle with them before you need them to be cooperative with you. So before getting dressed, spend 5 minutes playing and roughhousing and getting them laughing, really getting that connection up in the moment, and that's really, then they'll be much more cooperative. That's really important. So connection with strong-willed kids. And then the second thing that's really important with strong-willed kids is to get win-win solutions. So a win-win solution for a strong-willed kid that you're trying to get dressed is simply choices. They're going to choose what they wear. Or it could be that you're playing a game and you're pretending that they're your doll and you're going to dress your doll for the day. Or you get silly and you pretend to put their pants on your head or something like that. So you're giving them an invitation to play while you're trying to get them to cooperate with you. Another thing would be like if you have to go somewhere, pretend that they're your baby animal and they can ride on your back up to get pajamas on. Or maybe you're brushing their teeth and they have a special story or a song that you always do while you're brushing their teeth. So anytime you have a strong-willed kid, and this works great for everyone, even if your kid's not so strong-willed, it makes going through the routine so much more fun when you can find a way to play and connect and find a win-win solution. So win-win solution is they're doing what you want them to do, but they are also doing it in a way that makes it fun for them and gets buy-in for them. So when you get a lot of the, I'll say a third thing. So there's connection, getting win-win solutions, and also empathy. Empathy for your strong-willed child. Jennifer, it sounds like your little girl is just feeling like she's just getting bossed around all the time. So, instead of arguing with her over why she has to put her coat on, a big dose of like, I know, sweetheart, it's so hard to be 3 and mama and dada must feel like we're just bossing you around all the time. It's so hard, isn't it? So, something like that, just really a lot of empathy to show her that you understand how it feels to be 3 and how hard it is not to have that control over herself that she would like to have. And strong-willed kids are going to have really big feelings. That brings me to Kelly says that her 26-month-old has really big feelings, like massive. She says they don't fit into her little body and they explode. So anytime you have a child who's more strong-willed, more sensitive, or more anxious, they are going to have bigger feelings than other kids, and it's really, really important for those kids to cry. So strong-willed kids, sensitive kids, they're going to need to cry more. They're going to need to express themselves more. They're going to need to do, as we call it in peaceful parenting, empty the emotional backpack. So that's crying, that's laughing, that's really tons of empathy for how big their feelings are, not trying to talk them out of their feelings, and just being there and making the space for those feelings, really welcoming them. And that's how kids learn to learn to have emotional resilience, to know that they're going to be okay after really big upsets, because you know you're staying calm and you know they're going to be okay. So big feelings, that really just ties in with what all the other mamas were asking about with the strong-willed kids. Make room for your strong-willed kids' big feelings, because they're going to be there. You're going to get big reactions. They literally feel like they, all these little decisions that to you feel like nothing, to them it feels like life or death, because they really have such a strongly developed sense of themselves and their own integrity that they will be willing to go down fighting for something. Funny story about my son, who's 13. He was playing, he wanted to play touch football, or I don't know, flag football or something at school, but he wasn't sure that he wanted to get up early enough to go to the practice every day. So I said, why don't you try it out and see what you think, and try it, and if you don't want to do it, then don't. So he went the next day and he went to the practice, and he came home, and I said, so what do you think? Are you going to do football? And he said, no, I don't really want to get up that early. My husband said, what are you guys talking about? And my son said, football. And my husband said, you are not playing football. It's too dangerous. And my son said, I am so playing football. And, I pointed out the hilarity of the situation, and we all had a laugh about it. But it was that anytime you say no to a strong-willed child, it just activates that fight back response. So my son didn't want to play football, but somebody told him he couldn't, and all of a sudden there he was. He wants to play football. So strong-willed kids, remember that, remember your language. Try not to directly order them around. Make requests, suggestions. I'm not saying that you have to tiptoe around them, but just watch your language, that you're not giving orders or commands a lot, because that will activate their strong-willed sense and their sense that they need to fight back in order to preserve their integrity. And just remember that they will have big feelings. They have emotions that need to be processed on a regular basis, because they don't get to make the choices that they want to make, because life feels harder for them, because they don't have the freedom that they would like to wear their bathing suit every day to school in January, or whatever it is that your strong-willed child is fighting over you with. Give them as many choices as possible, as much as they can decide what they do when it's, something that's, my personal rule was, if it's not dangerous to themselves or other people, then I let them. My daughter, who's 10, was going around town in some new pajamas and a bathrobe that she'd gotten over the weekend as a present from her grandmother. So pretty silly looking, and I have to say it was a little bit hard to just let her do that, but didn't hurt anyone. She really wanted to do it. Really wasn't a big deal. Okay, moving on to, we've got an interesting series of questions about sort of toilet words or swear words. Carolyn says that there's lots of penis, vagina, and bathroom talk with her 4- and 7-year-old boys, and she knows that it's normal, but she's sensitive because she wants them to grow up respecting their bodies and women's bodies specifically, because she's worried that she's the only girl and they're saying vagina all the time. So totally normal for 4-year-olds and 7-year-olds to be silly. I would not worry that this silly talk means that they're not going to grow up to respect their bodies or women's bodies. And I do think that the bigger deal you make about it, the more they're going to think that it's hilarious and a way to get a real rise out of you. What we did in our house, I got this from an old Montessori teacher in my neighborhood. She said that whenever kids would say bathroom words or private words or whatever, she would say, go tell it to the toilet. So we would say that, go tell it to the toilet. The kids would run out into the bathroom and yell poop and pee and whatever other words at the toilet and come back out. And also sometimes they couldn't be bothered to run and tell it to the toilet, so they would just stop saying it. And that was really only when it got to the point where I found it super annoying. I would just say, Carolyn, you could even say like, hey, you guys want to talk about penises and vaginas? And just completely straight and open. And are there questions you have about penises and vaginas? I'm happy to talk about them with you. If you're just going to be silly, go and tell it to the bathroom. That's where we touch our privates. That's where we do our go pee and poo. And you can go in the bathroom and talk about penises and vaginas. And I don't think that this is just take a deep breath, tell yourself this is going to pass one day. Someday you'll want to talk about sex with your kids, to explain things to them or see if they have any questions, and they won't want to talk about it at all. So just take this as your opportunity to talk about it and know that it will pass, and someday they'll just find it super embarrassing and you won't be able to say vagina or penis without them covering up their ears and saying la 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 la. So you can tell it to the toilet, you can laugh and not make a big deal out of it and ignore it, or you can say, let's talk about penises and vaginas, and see if they still want to talk about them. And interesting, we've got a couple of other people saying that they've got kids who are using swears. And I know Aviva's kids are school aged, so Carolyn's age are a bit older. And then I also have Naomi, who says that her 11 and 13-year-olds are swearing. So in peaceful parenting, we always look at not only what the behavior is in the moment, but what's driving the behavior. So what's underneath the behavior? I would say Carolyn's, what's driving their behavior is just a desire to be silly and funny and joke around. And in that case, you don't really need to worry about it or try and curb it. Just, or you don't have to look too deeply, I guess is what I'm saying. It's what driving the behavior. 11 and 13-year-old boys who are yelling and swearing at each other and having fights, I would say that those boys need a little bit more help in figuring out how to work out their agreements and disagreements in a respectful way. And that in our family, you could have a family rule of, in our family, we only speak kindly to each other, even when we're upset. You can teach them to go and I realize I'm not totally addressing your swearing problem. You can't actually stop any child from using words that you don't want them to use. You can't cover their mouths with duct tape. You can't, keep them from speaking. Basically, you can just figure out why they're doing it and help them with alternatives. So with an older boys who are swearing at each other because they're upset with each other, they need some conflict management help. So they need to be taught to stop, drop, and breathe, which is what I teach parents and what I practice myself sometimes when I'm feeling when I'm feeling like things are falling apart. So you stop talking, stop whatever you're doing. You drop your agenda, means don't worry about whatever's happening in the moment right then, and you breathe. You get yourself back into a state of regulation, because it's impossible to work anything out when you're upset. So I would have a conversation with your boys when things aren't heated. Talk to them about how they can work things out and take a break from each other if they're too upset to work things out right then, but that it's not acceptable to swear at each other, tell each other to F off or whatever, because that's not what you do in your family. And hopefully you and your partner model that, of using respectful language. Kind may be a little bit too much of a reach if you're upset, but using respectful language even when you're upset with each other, and even when you're angry. And teach them that this is what you want them to be able to do when they're older with their partners or their kids, is even when you're upset, you don't scream at people and you don't swear at people, that you take some time to cool off and you come back and you work things out when you're calm. So the first step of that really is that impulse control, just to let it fly. So that's what I say for older kids in terms of swearing, because I think it's not coming from an experimenting, it's not coming from a being silly place, but really it's coming from a place of frustration and anger, which Carolyn's kids, totally other end of the spectrum. I mean, I wouldn't even call the bathroom talk swearing, but just language that you don't want to hear all the time, of being silly. And it sounds like Aviva, it sounds like you might be somewhere in the middle. You've got school-age kids who are learning a whole bunch of swear words from their friends at school and coming home and sharing with you. I love that your 9-year-old said he learned the C word, and luckily it wasn't the C word that you thought it might be. I think that it's really important to have a conversation. This goes across the board for everyone's kids who are using toilet words or swear words that you don't want them to use. Have a conversation about, these are just words, but people will judge you based on the words that you use. So if you use words that most people consider rude or swear words, people are not going to think you're a very nice kid. So you have to think carefully about that. If you use swear words, how other people will see you. That said, I think that maybe you have a time where they can use those words. I was talking about special time in the beginning of this Q&A, we were talking about special time, and as a connection tool, special time can also be great to use to do things that you're not normally allowed to do. So maybe in special time, you guys say all the swears you can think of, and your kids have a chance to say the swears during special time. It takes a little bit of the mystery out of them, takes a little bit of the forbidden out of them, or maybe they can go into the bathroom and say all the swears they know to the toilet, picking up on what I was saying to Carolyn. So basically, as I said before, you can't stop a child from using words you don't want them to use, but you can help them with alternatives. In terms of, if it doesn't sound though, Aviva, like your guys are frustrated and that's why they're swearing. It sounds like they're just experimenting. So tell them to say it to the bathroom. Use swear words in special time. Maybe you guys could do an activity where you write down all the swear words you know. Of course, you don't want to add any that they don't know, but really sort of demystify it. Take the glamour out of it. Let them know how they'll be judged if they do continue to swear. I think that they'll get over the novelty, especially if you're just kind of calm, cool, and collected about the whole thing and not really worrying about it. It's really, the more power you give this, the more they're going to want to do it. So take a couple deep breaths, stop, drop, and breathe yourself. They're just words. And yes, you don't want them going around swearing all the time. And you want to leave that up to them, though, to make the choices for people to see them as the nice little boys that they are and not rude little boys. And just let them say the words at another time, special time, in the bathroom, whatever. So I hope that was helpful, everybody, for the swearing and toilet word stuff. I'm going to move on. I have 2 more questions, and I haven't seen any questions come up here. So if you do, and I actually don't even know if I'm going to be able to see if any questions come up. I'll try and see if I can see on my computer. If you do have a question and you want to pop it into the comments, I'm happy to try and answer those at the end. Hopefully I can see them. So yeah, okay, great. And Justine asks, we're completely changing topics here. We've got 2 more questions. One from Justine about sibling stuff with a 7-year-old and a baby. And then we have a question from Brian about the balance between self-sufficient kids and doing things for them. Both great questions. Justine says that her 7-year-old likes to put his hands in the baby's mouth, bounce him too vigorously, get right up in his face. She's tried to calmly redirect, model better behavior, and show him how to play different games with his brother, but nothing seems to be sinking in. Sometimes she feels like she needs to pounce in and protect the baby, even when the baby seems to be enjoying the attention and style of his brother's play. So, Justine, there's a couple things in this. One is that if the baby likes it, I would just stay close by and monitor the situation. If the baby doesn't like it, then obviously you need to intervene and take the baby away so that he or I don't know if it, it's a brother. Protect the baby from the 7-year-old. It sounds like the 7-year-old is having some sibling challenges, in that I see sibling aggression on a continuum. On the one end, you have the more violent hitting, scratching behavior, and on the other end, you have sort of inappropriate play, the too hard hugs, the too vigorous bounces. And I think that maybe that's what's coming up here, although I'm not positive. A 7-year-old, though, should be able to regulate himself a little bit better, and it tells me that he's having a hard time, and that's why he's not able to regulate himself that well when you keep asking him not to do the things that he's doing and not to play with the baby that way. I think he needs some help with his mixed emotions about the baby's arrival. He likely feels replaced. He feels like maybe you don't love him anymore, and these are all, I'm talking about deep fears and deep feelings here. He needs to still have one-on-one time with you. He needs to be able to talk about, at 7, he should be able to talk about his feelings a little bit. He needs to be reassured that he hasn't been replaced. And reassurance only works if he's emotionally open to that, and he might really need to cry before he will hear any reassurance from you. He might need to cry and release some of his feelings, process some of his feelings about those fears that he's being replaced and the grief that he's experiencing at not being your only baby anymore. I have a ton of resources things that I've written about the sibling adjustment period, including a podcast that I was on where we talked about this, where there's really a lot more detail. So I'm going to post those for you in the comments so that you can take a look at that stuff, and anybody else who's watching, because I think that, you know, if he is doing this repeatedly, inappropriate play that's too rough, you know, even if the baby likes it, it's telling me that he really needs some help. He knows that, and I mean help from you in validating and acknowledging his hard feelings about the baby, help from you and welcoming those feelings, helping him to cry if he needs to cry, and really just helping him with those mixed feelings that he's having. Of course, he loves his brother, and he loves playing with him, and he loves being a big brother, but it's just so hard to lose that spotlight, to lose being the only apple of your eye, and to feel, you know, every older child feels replaced on some level, and every older child grieves when you add to your family, even if they love their sibling. It's a very complicated time, and I think that's what you're finding with your son, is this play, this too rough play is really a signal to you that he needs help with those feelings, and you can do that for him. You really can. Okay, Justine, I hope that was helpful. My last question from Brian. Brian says, I would love your thoughts on raising a self-sufficient child who's also willing to help others. I feel my 9-year-old asks me to do too many things for her, get food or drink, bring toys, grab school supplies. Sometimes I do it because it's convenient, and sometimes I don't because I'm already doing something. He says, on the one hand, I want her to take care of herself, so I tell her she can get it. On the other, if someone asked her to do it, I would want her to help out. He'd love some practical responses to her requests that build both sides of the equation. So, Brian, sometimes I think that our kids ask us to do things for them because they feel loved, and it makes them feel loved, and it makes them feel taken care of. So your daughter asking you to do things for her could possibly be because she needs more nurturing from you. So where can you add more nurturing to her life? Where can you actually preempt her requests for that caretaking? You know, do this for me, do that for me. Where can you make her feel extra nurtured and extra cared for her? Maybe you offer to help her with something at 9. You know, maybe you offer to carry her backpack for her, or maybe you offer to help her with cleaning her room, or you know your daughter, what would make her feel nurtured. I don't know if she would still like you to help her get dressed, or, you know, my daughter who's 10, she still likes me to pretend she's a baby sometimes, and she says, baby me mama, and I pretend to dress her, and I pretend to rock her, and all of those things. Maybe your daughter would like that. So that's one part of it, is that sometimes kids ask us to do a lot for them because it makes them feel nurtured and makes them feel loved. And if that's the case, then you know, you can do it for her preemptively, so it doesn't feel like she's just ordering you around and you're getting things for her all the time. And you can find other places in her life, in your life, where you can offer her that love and nurturing. And in terms of when she, you know, I think it's fine that sometimes you do it because it's convenient for you, and sometimes you don't because you're busy. And you can always just say, oh, sweetie, I'd love to go get that toy for you, but I'm right in the middle of cooking dinner. Sometimes I'll say to my daughter, if you want to wait till I'm done, then I'll go get it for you. And she goes, and she goes to get it herself. So you can continue, I would say, continue on with that, in that vein. And I do hear what you're saying about wanting her to be helpful. So you want to model doing that helpfulness. And I think that you're doing it exactly right by modeling that you do help out when you can, and that if you can't do it right then, you will as soon as it's possible. You're modeling what you would expect her to do. I mean, you wouldn't really expect her to drop everything she's doing to do a favor for somebody, I guess, unless they really needed it, and that could be part of your modeling. She really needs it, and even if you're doing something, then you could stop what you're doing and help her. So model the kind of behavior that you'd like her to do in terms of helping out when it's really necessary or when it's just nice. Find other ways that you can do that nurturing so she doesn't feel she has to ask you so much to do things for her, and do it preemptively so it doesn't feel like you're doing her song and dance, dad get me this, dad get me that, and you're doing it. But just try and be, nurturing in ways before she asks. And finally, I wanted to address the self-sufficiency part. I don't think you need to worry too much. It doesn't sound like she is asking you to do things because she can't do them for herself, just that she wants you to do them. So she does sound very self-sufficient. We never have to worry that we are doing too much for our children in terms of helping them or babying them if they need it, because kids have such a strong drive for that independence. And of course, I'm not talking about jumping in and doing things for them unasked or unbidden, or not letting them do things for themselves. I'm talking about when they're having a low day and they just say, can you help me with this, or can you do this for me? Sure, go ahead and do it. You're not going to stifle their independence, and to the contrary, you will help them by helping them with their needs and meeting their needs for dependence that they have on you. You will help them become more independent by meeting those needs, so they feel that they feel confident and whole, and that they can count on people when they need to, and that is what launches them out into being self-sufficient and independent. So don't worry about that. She's gonna, in a few years, she would roll her eyes if you said, do you want me to do that for you, honey? So just enjoy, helping her when you can, and modeling all of the nice things that you are modeling. And lastly, I'll say, I really hate it when you hear that don't do anything for your child that they can do for themselves. How would you like it if if somebody said, I'm going to assume that you have a partner, if somebody said, don't do anything for your partner that they can do for themselves, and that was about you, and your partner, you make your partner a cup of coffee every morning just because it's nice and you love to do it, and somebody said, well, you shouldn't be making your partner coffee, they should make it themselves. Don't do anything for your partner that they can do for themselves. I just think that's the worst advice. I think that we do things for people we love all the time because it's a way we can show our love, and it's a way that makes them feel loved, and it's nice to do things for other people. Maybe you're up and getting a drink of water, and your partner says to you, can you get me a drink too? And you say, no, you can do that for yourself. I want you to be independent. Like, how silly would that feel, right? So don't worry with your kids that you have to be pushing them towards independence or self-sufficiency. Meet the needs that they have, baby them, nurture them if they need it, and know that you're giving them this really solid foundation that they can move out from. Okay, that's a lot of talking. I don't see that anyone has asked any questions. I'm just going to double check here. And it looks like we don't have any other questions. So thank you for joining me today. Once again, I am Sarah Rosensweet, Peaceful Parenting Coach. You can find me at sararosensweet.com. You can find me at Peaceful Parenting with Sarah Rosensweet, which is my Facebook group. And you can follow me on my at Peaceful Parenting Coach Facebook page. So thank you so much. And I will be back next week, Monday at noon, with a topic. And thank you. And good to see you. And I will see you on the Facebook page and in the group. Okay, bye.